Hi everyone. I'm trying to save myself some typing time because I really don't want to type all this out. As many of you know, I went to court today. Today was the first part of a whole series of parts of what happens within our judicial branches. What took place today was a severance of the cases and the appointment of myself as my own attorney. So let me quantify this. I'm facing four charges that I got on my birthday. Public intox, resisting arrest, paraphernalia, and marijuana. The court-appointed attorney is going to represent me on the public intox and the resisting arrest. I clearly have a defense against those charges. Because of the nature of my type of defense on the marijuana charge and the paraphernalia charge, they're not able to argue that the law is at fault. So one of the things I have to be kind of cautious about is the rule of self-incrimination. I can't incriminate myself, even though it might necessitate that very thing in order to find that the law is at fault and not my actions in owning or using cannabis. So it's very sticky, and in Idaho it's a very unique thing that anybody's going to represent themselves in a court of law as their own attorney. So being as how this is kind of a unique prospect and a unique way that I'm confronting these charges, the system's not making any special allowances or accommodations for me, but I would have to say that my impression is they're not discouraging me. I would say would be the right word. They're not encouraging me to do this. This is, in their light, in their mind, a very foolhardy thing to do. And the court, advised me against being my own attorney in this case. However, my attorney, who has been appointed for me for the other charges, has to agree that, under the circumstances and under the type of defense that I'm trying to pursue, it would be against his ethical code of conduct, his sworn oath to uphold the law, to challenge the law as being at fault, because he's taken an oath to uphold that law, which I think is gives me a unique position, because I haven't taken any type of oath like that. I think the last oath that I've ever taken in my life, well, I got married once, but that was rescinded, was the Boy Scouts oath. I pledge allegiance or whatever. But I've taken no type of oath of what they've done. So this gives me a unique advantage in being able to present a different type of a case before a jury. Now, the interesting thing is now I've got to do the research and to find out what I'm going to be allowed to use by way of defense, using my defense as the law being the inappropriate part of this whole confrontation. So my whole argument's against the Controlled Substances Act, because that was an executive order signed by a president who was later impeached and found as guilty as, I think, 7 felonies. Don't quote me on that. But he was found guilty of crimes, impeached. Nixon was a crook. But he also imposed the Controlled Substances Act upon the American people by way of executive order, which was one man's signature telling the hundreds of millions of people what kind of law they're going to be abridged by. And I take great exception with that in any case, because it doesn't allow for the due process, and that's why we have the channels and form of government that we have, is so that there's not any one person making those types of decisions. So what I'll probably be arguing is for jury nullification. Now, no court in their right mind is going to allow the jury to know that they can break the law by not being obliged to the same oaths that the courts are obliged to, which is to uphold the law. We're all, in a way, bound to uphold the law. So my attorney's not able to give my hand away by telling the court, well, his intent is the argument that, perhaps Dr. King had in saying that, when you see an unjust law, that, sometimes you have to violate that law in order to bring attention to the fact that it is unjust. And that is part and parcel of what I'm hoping to do with bringing my own case before a jury in this state of Idaho. Now, whether this is going to be a landmark decision, whether this is going to be a landmark case, I don't know. That really depends on how people are going to view it, how people are going to pay attention to it, or if they don't pay any attention to it at all. The way I figure it is that, damned if I do, damned if I don't. I'm looking at 2 years, which is a year for each charge, a year for the paraphernalia, and a year for possession of marijuana. But to me, there's also the stigma that comes along with it, which is being made into a pariah, a scarlet letter for the rest of my life, in saying that, this marijuana charge will keep me from finishing my college career because I won't be able to obtain student loans. It will keep me from getting all types of employment. And I used to work in network infrastructure, in IT, working in very secure jobs where I'm around secure data all the time. A conviction of this nature is going to disqualify me for that type of work probably forever. So this is a game changer. A conviction for this, not just in the state of Idaho, but in all kinds of other states and in all relations to the law, comes with some very harsh penalties that are outside the 1 year in jail and $1,000 maximum fine that can be instituted in Idaho. That's what I'm fighting for. And even if I end up having to pay the 2 years in an Ada County jail, which is, you're better off being out in the pen, if I can bring the attention to it that it's deserving, convince a jury that the federal government didn't have it right, that Richard Nixon didn't have it right, that the courts don't have it right by continuing this foolish, ceaseless prohibition on cannabis at a detriment to everything that we're seeing in our culture today. I'm an intelligent guy. I've used it all my life. I can't deny it. I won't deny it. That very statement is enough to convict me of that charge in Idaho. I've just incriminated myself. I committed another, I've basically admit that I use, which is a crime. But if I don't tell you I use, and I don't tell you the reasons why, and I don't explain to you why it's important for me to risk 2 years of my life, my freedom, then, nothing is going to change. And it's my hope to change things. I wasn't sent here I don't think I'm here just to blindly go down the road. I don't believe this is right. And I'm going to put everything I have behind. Now, my premise is off of the Declaration of Independence and that statement that says I have the right to pursue happiness. I suffer from clinical depression, from bouts of bipolar. Happiness to me isn't something that's just attainable. And whether it's artificial or anecdotal, I'd like to be happy. Unfortunately, my brain chemistry doesn't work in a way that I function like a normal average citizen. In some ways, I'm kind of glad because I have a lot of empathy and I have a lot of breadth and depth to to who I am because of it. But it's also tough to live in. And cannabis gives me relief. It gives me relief where drugs like Lamictal and lithium and Prozac and Ativan and all these other ones never worked. That the side effects were more dangerous and debilitating in some cases, than the disease of depression itself. Now, whether I'm going to be able to bring that into a jury, whether I'm going to be able to tell that to 12 people from off the street, I don't know. But I do know this much. Inside that courtroom, the one thing that I trust beyond anything else, because I don't trust anything in that building. I think it's all a bunch of chicanery. I think it's all a fraud. I think it's all a manipulation of justice. But the one part of the factor that I have the greatest faith in is in those 12 citizens that are willing to do their jury duty. And that's an important duty, that you have an influence. Because if you're seeing that people are being prosecuted for bad laws, you do have the right and the obligation to not convict. Now, this could be considered jury tampering by telling you if you didn't think the guy should be hung out on a pot charge, you shouldn't convict him. Well, it is what it is. I'll fight that charge too. Because the fact remains is that until we the people stand up and say, look, we're no longer going to abide by this nonsense, this foolishness. We're not going to pay for it. We're not going to allow it. We're not going to see our families destroyed by it. We're not going to see people suffering needlessly because we were not going to make this available for whatever other reason they can come up with. So when I go to argue this before a jury, the shadow of a doubt isn't upon my actions, because there's no doubt. I'm not going to leave them with any doubt there. I know what I've done, and I know what I'll do, and I know what I'm capable of. But what I want to put the doubt in is on whether that law, whether that scheduling, whether that bill is authentic, credible, and worthy of being upheld within our courts. I don't believe that it is. And I believe I can argue that to a jury. And it looks like the state of Idaho is going to give me that opportunity. So, stay tuned.